To the Psychology in Schools Team podcast. My name's Linda Brindle. I'm a psychotherapist working within that team, and I'm hosting today's session on sleep. With me, I've got Hope Westgate with me, a clinical psychologist from our team. So we'll be hearing some of her expert knowledge and understanding around sleep. And we're really excited to also have two guests with us today who have been involved from different perspectives in the sleep programme that's being offered by Norfolk and Suffolk Mental Health Trust. Now, we know that sleep is a common difficulty that many people experience at different stages of their life, and we're also aware that during this time of COVID, there's been additional challenges that different people have faced around sleep. Parents have certainly reported the challenges of some of their young people and their sleep cycles with the periods of lockdown and that impact on them perhaps not being at school for longer periods. But even as we're coming through and through into a different stage of COVID, sleep issues continue, and we know it's quite a challenge for adolescents. So welcome to Ethan and Olivia, and let's just hand over to you so you can introduce yourself. Ethan, can I start with you?
Yeah, my name's Ethan. I've been with the sleep induction team I was with them for 6 weeks. They helped me improve my sleep and my mental health, as well as them being able to help me come out as transgender, and I'm 16 years old.
That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much for being with us today, Ethan, and we really look forward to hearing more about your story and what things that you found really helpful from the sleep programme. And Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm an assistant psychologist that works within a youth team, and I worked with Ethan and we looked specifically at his sleep.
Thank you. So the sleep programme at the moment is being offered to specific young people who are already within the mental health services, but what we want the opportunity to do is to share sort of key aspects of what's helpful for everyone to know about sleep, so that you can actually all utilise the sort of information that's been gathered about what really helps. So I guess what might be really helpful to start with is just to think about, why do adolescents in particular struggle with sleep?
Yeah, so if I just start off on that one, I think we know that sleep is essential for lots of different reasons. It's restorative for us, for our bodies. It's helpful for our emotions. But there are times in our lives where people are more likely to struggle with sleep difficulties. And one of those times, as you've mentioned, Linda, is when people are in that kind of more teenage, young adult stage of life. We know that sleep can be a bit tricky then. And there are some kind of more biological reasons why that's trickier. So one being that, as we know, young people are still growing a lot. So they've got kind of physical changes in their body, as well as hormones going on. So when hormones are spiking, that can impact on people's sleep patterns as well. So actually, there's kind of lots of physical growth and development going on for teenagers, which can affect sleep. But also something that's kind of really interesting, and it's found in the research, is that a lot of teenagers actually have something called delayed sleep onset. So that means that often they don't get sleepy till a little bit later than typically people would. So that's because one of the hormones, which is really important for sleep, melatonin, is usually secreted a little bit later for those people, particularly in their teenage years. So they're not getting sleepy till a bit later and wanting to wake up a little bit later as well. So there's actually good scientific grounding for that stereotype that teenagers want to sleep in a little bit. So they do have that delayed sleep onset, and I think that can cause challenges when you think about things like school, which isn't later on in the day. So often what happens is they just miss out on having some sleep because they're still, not getting sleepy till later and having to wake up quite early for school. So that can be really challenging. So yeah, I think it's a really hard part of life, because at that stage sleep is really, really essential, because they're also learning and growing and that brain development. But it's really tricky.
Thank you, Hope. And Ethan, I wonder, from your perspective, what would you say? Do you have an opinion about why adolescents, or why you in particular found sleep a struggle, or perhaps why you got involved with the sleep programme?
I got involved with the sleep program because I suffered really badly with my sleep. I couldn't sleep throughout the night. I'd go to bed around 10ish, wake up around 12 in the morning and just constantly wake up. I was having many, many nightmares and just couldn't get to sleep. And having no sleep really affects your mind, your energy and everything. I couldn't even get up to meet friends on time. I couldn't go out with my mum just because of sleep. And everyone thinks obviously teenagers are lazy, but when you look into it more, there's a lot more reasons why we end up sleeping in, and some of it is just we just can't settle at night, and it does make a big impact on your mental health.
Yeah, and I can hear from what you're saying how it really, the lack of sleep was impacting on all aspects of your day-to-day life and your ability to function and just do the everyday things. Sounds a real challenge.
It was a challenge indeed. It did take a big toll on my mental health, not being able to just go out because I wasn't waking up till at least 1, 2 in the afternoon because I wasn't getting a full night's sleep. So it did take a big toll on me, but using the sleep intervention, it really helped.
So maybe this is a good point to hand over to Olivia. I wonder what, in terms of the sort of things that the sleep program has identified, are the key things that we need to know about in terms of the science of sleep. What should we know? What do we need to know in order to be better informed about what research has discovered?
I suppose a key thing that we always cover in the sleep program is a bit of psychoeducation on what's really kind of going on, what's driving sleep. And one of the big drivers of sleep is our own internal body clock. So this idea that everything we do is kind of set to a time, but also that this body clock is really, really affected by things like the environment, kind of other lifestyle factors, and that can easily get kind of dysregulated. So one of the kind of really important parts of that kind of is affected, the body clock is affected by, is light. And if you think about kind of today's day and age, and especially kind of what teenagers are up to late at night, quite commonly they're kind of on their phones really late, they're watching TV, they're kind of flooding their eyes with light, and that's kind of one of the main kind of triggers for melatonin, that sleep hormone, in being released. So it's really important to think about how certain factors do kind of factor into how easy it is for us to feel sleepy in the evenings, because the longer that we're kind of experiencing light in the evenings, the more it's going to push back that time when we feel sleepy. And another thing that is I think is really Ethan found helpful as well for what we covered is learning actually what happens when we sleep, realizing that there are different kinds of sleep, and that just because we're getting, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hours of sleep, we might not be getting good quality sleep. So we spent quite a lot of time kind of talking about what might be impacting how long we're spending in these different kinds of sleep. And kind of one of the things that we spoke a lot about is those kind of initial earlier stages of sleep, light sleep. During these stages, it's really easy for us to kind of wake up and hear noises or feel disturbed, which can pull us out of that sleepy feeling and keep us up.
Thank you. And Ethan, is there anything else that you found in terms of thinking about the science of sleep and that whole area of the body clock and light and things? Is there anything else that you found was particularly important for you in making some of the changes that you did to your sleep pattern?
We did also talk about caffeine intake. I'm also a smoker, and not knowing that nicotine can also energize your brain. So not knowing that, and me having a cigarette at least 10 minutes before I went to bed, actually stimulated my brain. And it wasn't until me and Olivia spoke that having a cigarette at least an hour or an hour and a half before you go to sleep lessens the stimulation. And having a coffee, but after gone 12 can also stimulate your brain. And just learning that, just cutting that down, I was sleeping throughout the night. And then when we started obviously talking more about the stages of sleep, I understood my brain more, because I obviously struggled about waking up, and we thought about different things that I could do if I did wake up. And we also talked about how just being able to get up and do something or go sit somewhere that's not my bed, and teaching my brain that my bed is my sleep area, not for the rest of the day, that completely helped. And it's important to not have caffeine before you go to bed, because that will stimulate your brain so much.
So Ethan, I just wanted to ask, were you talking about 12 midnight or 12 in noon when you said about not having caffeine after that time?
12 noon. From
Right.
12 noon, it stimulates your brain even more. Then you just think a simple coffee is going to wake you up, but it carries on the caffeine.
Yes, and we know that actually that caffeine stays in our system so much longer than we'd expect. Can anyone remember the figures around that?
Yeah, I think it's around 6 hours. So 6 hours after having caffeine, half of it is still around your system, which is pretty amazing. I think, yeah, as Ethan said, I don't think we always kind of notice the little things that we're doing in the day that actually are having such a huge impact on us in the night, or even the things we do just before bed. So just being able to kind of look at your habits in the day as well as your nighttime routine is really helpful. I think one that's really apparent to me at the moment, particularly because we're experiencing a hot spell, is also temperature. So often people do find it quite tricky to sleep when it's really hot at night. And actually when we're sleeping, we do need a bit more of a cooler environment to help us sleep. So, I'm kind of thinking about things I can change even in the day, like keeping curtains and blinds shut in the room so the sunlight doesn't come in, and heat it up. So I think it's really helpful to kind of pick apart bits of your day which could be impacting on your sleep and seeing if there are any modifications that you can make.
I think something really important Ethan mentioned was this idea of only using your bed for sleep. And I think teenagers especially end up using their bed for almost everything. It's the place that they relax. It's the place they do their schoolwork. It's the place they just use for everything. So it kind of, in our brain, it becomes associated with so many other things other than sleep, and that really confuses our brain and makes it harder to get those sleepy feelings in the evening, which is so important for us to just drift off.
And I think something that Ethan was commenting on there as well was around that frustration that we can also have in bed, and I know that I definitely do this myself as well, and I think it's quite common that when we can't sleep it does become really frustrating, and then we kind of get stuck with our thoughts. We're getting really frustrated in bed, but actually sometimes kind of being able to take a break by getting out of bed, doing a kind of low stimulus activity and then coming back to bed just for sleep. I think that's often quite a powerful tool to use, and rather than staying in bed trying to force yourself to sleep and getting more and more frustrated, which just kind of keeps you in that awake cycle.
So Ethan, you've mentioned some of the things that were helpful. Are you aware of any other things that were factors that were sort of impacting on how you had been organising your sleep pattern that you haven't talked about yet? Any other things that would be top tips for other people, young people listening to this podcast?
Phones. It sounds idiotic, but phones was another main reason why I would stay up, because my main thing when I woke up was I'll go on my phone, I'll go on an app called TikTok, and TikTok simulates your brain, because once you start scrolling, you're still scrolling, and you forget the track of time. And like Olivia said, the light from your phone just simulates your brain more. And with me, it made me think it was in daylight because I'd have my brightness up so high. So I've now started to come off my phone later before I go to bed and only watch TV. And then if I was coming up to bed, I just kind of sit there. Sometimes I play a board game with my mum or something just to keep myself going instead of looking at a light screen. So then I'll make myself sleepy, because it's simple looking at your phone. The brightness just simulates your brain more. And that was a big struggle for me, because I was always on my phone.
I think that de-arousal is key as well. We can't sleep if we're feeling alert, we're feeling just basically on. We need to start winding down, and that's really, really important. And looking at what those factors are in our life that is kind of keeping us alert, whether it's kind of staying up worrying about the fact you can't sleep, or it's going on your phone and looking at TikTok like Ethan. It's just really recognizing that's going to play a major role in how you're able to feel sleepy and how easy it is for you to drift off.
Yeah, and I think it's so difficult these days in terms of thinking about phone use and trying to kind of cut that down a little bit, because our phones are our everything really. And I think particularly for younger people, it's very much a platform to socialise with other people, to kind of see what's going on in the world. So I know that often people say it's really hard to kind of put their phone down at a certain hour because they know that their friends are on it, or they're getting WhatsApp pinged to them in the middle of the night. There's other people doing that, and if I'm not in that, am I going to miss out on something? So I think it can be kind of really tricky to kind of say, actually, this is the time I'm going to stop going on it, and you feel like you're missing out a little bit on that. I don't know, Ethan, if there's any tips you had around that, or how you manage that with friends.
I would put my phone on do not disturb. So when you put your phone on do not disturb, you don't get any notifications through. So, and I would also turn my brightness down in case a notification did come through, because the lightness of your phone lighting up, your brain wants to look at it. So just simply turning your brightness down, turning it on do not disturb. And I would also put my phone on charge, because I have a desk side table. So I put it on charge and put it as further away from me as possible. And I would not touch my phone until I wake up the next morning, because otherwise I'm just going to keep stimulating my brain, and I'll keep going through the same process like I did before I did sleep intervention, where I was up constantly, and the first thing I would do would be go on my phone.
And I think it's also important to think about other things that you enjoy and that you could do instead. So really thinking about what is something that maybe I haven't been doing, but I could do it just before bed, and it's a little bit more passive, it's not as stimulating, and kind of making more of a schedule. So it's fine to use social media and go on TikTok, but maybe put that on earlier in the evening and then switch to a different activity that you also enjoy. I think because it's quite common nowadays that everything just becomes consumed with social media, and that takes up a lot of time. What are those other things that maybe you could be doing instead that maybe you've been neglecting a little bit? Just have a think about that.
Thanks, Olivia. And I was just wondering if there's any other tips. That is great to hear about Ethan's experience, but you've obviously used the sleep program with other people as well. Any other things that you found young people found particularly helpful, just thinking of general practical changes they can make to how they're organising their time in the day or managing night times?
Something I think is quite powerful when I say it to young people is I give you permission to not have an early night. I think that's something you hear quite a lot, is if you can't sleep, have an early night. But if you're struggling to sleep, it's not going to help having an early night laying in bed and stressing about the fact that you're not sleeping. That's going to add to kind of that worry and that alertness that we want to avoid. Sleep needs to be kind of effortless and just automatic. So we can't really control when we fall asleep, unfortunately. The only thing we can really control is when we wake up. So if you're kind of looking for like kind of little tips to help you just get to sleep a little bit earlier, try and wake up just half an hour earlier. Set your alarm for half an hour earlier and make a wake up routine. Make it compelling to get out of bed in the morning. Make it so you want to get up and start the day. And what they'll end up doing is putting pressure on your brain to feel sleepier earlier and make sleep feel a little bit more automatic in the evening. And kind of giving young people permission to do that, I think, is quite revolutionary when you've been told all your life just have an early night. That can sometimes be the worst thing to do.
And what about exercise? Is exercise important in getting people ready for sleep?
Yeah, I can see Ethan nodding there. So yes, very important. It's really important that you kind of wear yourself out that you need sleep. If we think about why we need sleep, it's to replace energy. So the more things we're doing, the more energy we're using up. It puts more pressure on our body to actually want to go to sleep in the evening. So at first that can be quite daunting if you've got no energy. But just doing a little bit more activity in the day, you'll be surprised at how much pressure that puts on your body to want to go to sleep. And also napping. I think Ethan will agree with me here that you might think a quick little nap in the day is like the best thing, but if you're struggling to sleep at night, what you're doing is you're taking away that kind of sleepy feeling when you're having a nap in the day. So if you're feeling like you need a nap, think of something else you could do that's restful, but something that would force you to stay awake and force you to keep going. So you're building up that sleepy feeling. So by the time it comes to the evening, it's automatic and you don't have to think about it.
Thanks, that's really helpful to hear about. I guess that we also come across lots of young people, and in fact all of us can notice the times when we're struggling to fall asleep is often when that we've got worries on our mind, or when we're noticing that we're struggling with our mood. I wonder what people should be doing if they're finding that their minds are very busy in the evening and they're worrying and that's really having an impact on their sleep.
So something that kind of Ethan and I discussed was something called worry time. So kind of giving yourself permission to have a space to worry, to think about all those things that are on your mind. Maybe write it down, put it in a jar, keep it away, keep these worries away from bedtime. So it's okay to have them, but try not to have them. If you're noticing that you're worrying about something, pop it on a piece of paper, put it to the side and rearrange a time when you could have time to worry about it the next day, not near bedtime. And also scheduling in time to earlier in the evening to talk to people, talk through what's on your mind, just so you get those things off your chest. So by the time it gets to the evening, they're not weighing you down and you can start to relax and kind of become a bit more sleepy. I think Ethan had some good tips on that as well.
I was going to ask, how did you find those ideas? Did they feel helpful, or what worked for you?
Yeah, it was very helpful to have that, worry time. And after my, as me and Olivia call it, worry time, I would go have a nice hot bath, because a hot bath, to me, was washing my worries away. And a hot bath as well, just the steam and the hotness makes you tired. So having a hot bath before you go to bed and then just getting straight into bed after, I was straight away falling asleep because I was just so tired. Because I'd have a full-on day exercising, because I've since I'd done the sleep intervention, I was actually doing running and I was just practicing boxing and everything like that. I was just doing simple little exercises, what would make me tired. And then I'd come home and everything, have my dinner, and then throughout the evening, I'd do different things to make me more and more tired. So bath as well before bed really helps. Obviously not a cold shower, because that's what you'd have in the morning to wake you up, but a hot bath really helped me to be able to just fall asleep.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess, what Ethan's saying and having that bath after doing that worry time is also having just an activity that's also slightly more relaxing as well before bed. And I think that's important to remember in the run up to bed. We really want to start doing the more relaxing stuff so we can think or talk or write down our worries beforehand, preferably a few hours beforehand. But the kind of little segment of time we have just before bed, it's really helpful to do something that just calms you down. And I think that will look different for different people. It may be a bath, it may be other forms of kind of informal relaxation, it may be listening to some gentle music, it could be lots of different things for different people. There's also lots of different kind of formal relaxation exercises you can do. So some people quite like doing breathing exercises, for example, so that may include just slow breathing in and out. It may be using a particular app or recording that takes you through a relaxation exercise. For example, there's ones on breathing, there's ones on kind of muscle tension and relaxation. So there's all sorts of things that you can choose, formal or informal types of relaxation, which can help. But I think importantly, it's about trying out what works and thinking about what's best for you and what does help you kind of relax before that moment that you go to bed.
What if people are really just caught up with worries and they're just constantly going around the same worries all the time? Or, if there's nightmares or other things going on, have we got any sort of thing to share with families listening to this around what might help in those situations?
So with nightmares, that was something that Ethan previously suffered with. And that's something that we came to further down the line, because we found through kind of making those small behavioural changes and regulating our body clock and regulating the sleep cycle, it tends to kind of alleviate a lot of the kind of how many nightmares you're having, how much you're waking up. But something we did kind of discuss and put into practice is how what we do when we do have a nightmare, when we wake up. Because obviously, understandably, when you have a nightmare, you wake up and you feel alert, you feel distressed. So it's important to kind of have little things around you that are going to soothe you and let you know that it's okay, it was a nightmare, but now you're back in the present, you're in your bed and you're safe. So we talked about kind of what kind of techniques, what sensory items you could have nearby. A common good one to use is having a glass of water next to your bed that you can use and take a sip off to ground yourself, to, like I say, bring you back and let your body know that you're safe. We tend to find that, like I said, by kind of regulating your body clock, those sorts of things start to lessen more and more. And I think that's what, Ethan, you found that as well?
Yeah, definitely. It was with my nightmares, a lot of them was because they got worse when my sleep got worse. It was just random because I never thought that could be possible for sleep, just to make your nightmares worse. But another thing for me was realizing where I was. Having a photo of my mum next to me in bed made me realize that I'm safe, I'm okay, sort of thing. Just because when you have a nightmare, sometimes you just wake up, sort of thing. And it would make you realize where you are, and then you sort of calm down and just get back to sleep. Because I really did suffer with nightmares. I would have up to 4 nightmares a night, so it was a real struggle for me, and that was a lot of reason why my sleep was so rubbish, because of just nightmares constantly. But after being able to realize where I was and having different things like simple glass of water or a photo next to me, it kind of just calmed me down, and the nightmares become less. They would never fully stop, but that's also because of other mental health issues that I do suffer with, that nightmares will never stop, but they slowed down and become one a night.
Wow, so that sounds a massive difference. And just to clarify, so you said actually being able to, after the experience of a nightmare where your mind's in another place, trying to do things to pull yourself back into the present, which is what Olivia was calling grounding, is what really could help settle and calm you down again at that point. And I guess what we know with grounding is that drawing on our different senses helps us to connect back with the here and now, so that the glass of water and the picture for you, so that visual of your mum is really important. And I guess sometimes for other people that might be something soft that they can touch, or it might be using some music to help to calm them, or noticing even how they're feeling the sort of covers on their bed, can all be ways to help reconnect back into the present. I'm just thinking that one thing that might be really helpful for some people on this podcast is will be to hear about what things are helpful that others can do to support someone who's struggling with sleep, and maybe also just highlighting a few things that aren't so helpful. I guess Olivia, you mentioned something already about sort of taking pressure off around particular sleep time as not being helpful. But I wonder if we can just spend our last few minutes thinking about what are helpful tips to give to those trying to support young people struggling with sleep.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and sleep does impact, the rest of your family network as well. And parents often say they feel quite worried and stressed themselves about their child's sleeping pattern. So as we said, you can't force someone to fall asleep. So I think the best advice for people, parents or friends or whoever's supporting you with sleep, is just to kind of come alongside that young person and work together with them. So if parents are supporting their children with their sleep, getting to find out from them what is helpful, what is not so helpful, maybe exploring all of them, what are the advantages and disadvantages of changing a sleep routine, asking themselves, what do you think I could do differently, or what could I add into your routine to help? So I guess just really working as a team rather than saying exactly what someone should or shouldn't be doing.
I think just like little things you could do, just encourage them to get out of their bed space in the day, encourage them to go and do more activities and things they enjoy doing. Thinking about, can I help them get up in the morning? That's something that if you had a bad night's sleep, it's really hard to get up the next day, and as I mentioned previously, that can be really helpful. Getting up at a set time every morning can be really helpful for regulating the body clock. So coming into their room and encouraging them to get out of bed, and thinking about how they could make that easier for the young person. Yeah, and just thinking about all those little environmental cues. And around the house, can you switch off main lights? Can you put lamps on? Can you open the windows for a blast of fresh air in the evening. Just little, tiny little things that you can do that just starts to regulate the body clock and encourage those feelings of sleepiness.
And I guess also added to that, if parents themselves are supporting, just to model those sleep habits as well, because actually I think we're all prone to looking at our phones later than we should, or maybe having caffeine later than we should. So kind of if you're supporting someone with their changing their sleep habits, to do that with them as well, so that you can kind of model it and also reinforce it.
Okay, and Ethan, any last thoughts about what you learned, or what you perhaps the family around you have learned is helpful or not helpful for you? What worked for you in terms of having support from others?
To be fair, I napped a lot, and it wouldn't be like a 20-minute nap there, 20-minute nap there. It was a full-on at least 6 hours of napping throughout the day. And I think what I found helpful was because my mum actually suffers with sleep as well. And she's on sleeping medication, and she does it so she takes her sleeping medication early and sits in a dark room, because then it makes her sleepy. She would help me throughout the day by not letting me nap and by getting me to do stuff throughout the day. So it's just simple things of supporting someone with sleep just throughout the day, not letting them nap, keeping their mind busy, keeping them doing something. Like my mum would get me to do stuff in the house, maybe clean my room or clean the house sort of thing, and help out and keep myself busy, and would also get me to go out and walks with her. And it's just simple things like that can make someone feel a lot better and make them more tired. And it was just, not napping was my main thing. As a teenager, we just, you feel tired during the day, I'll just take a quick nap. That nap never is quick, it turns into hours, and then your whole day's gone. So it's just a simple of no, don't let a young person nap. Obviously, another thing was sometimes my stepdad would go to me, why didn't you have an early night? Is when he realised saying to me having an early night, I would end up waking up later in the night. The simple early night for someone who suffers with sleep can turn into a night with no sleep at all. So it was just the simple fact of they would keep me energized throughout the day, simple just going on walks, and that just made me more and more tired. And that's when the nightmares became less as well, because I wasn't napping, I was going on walks, and I was keeping my mind busy throughout the day, and that just really helped me get better. And just many things with sleep, it helps you be able to go out with people and meet your friends, because you're sleeping throughout the day, and sleeping throughout the day and your friends are going out, you feel like you're missing out more. And it really helped my mental health, because I felt so low because I was just so sleepy all the time. I wasn't able to go out anywhere. So it was a big impact on me until I made it better by the help of the sleep team. It made me feel much more better, and I was able to do stuff. I was able to meet friends, and I was able to come out as transgender to my family as well, what took a big weight off my shoulders, and it really, really helped.
Wow, it sounds like it's been a massive impact for you, Ethan, and thanks for sharing it with us all. And I guess one thing I'm hearing that I'd just like to check in with Olivia about is, is sort of Ethan's sort of hopes of what he wanted to manage in the day that he wasn't managing. Was that a helpful driver that you sort of guided? I'm just thinking of how parents can support their young people around that sort of motivation to change sleep habits, which have been so ingrained that it feels really tricky to make change.
And that was really helpful to kind of guide the journey, because something I asked Ethan the very first time I met him was, what is sleep stopping you doing? What would you be doing if you could sleep well? And that's the first thing he said. I would spend time with my loved ones. And then we set goals around achieving that. And I think when we met, it was out of 10, with 10 being that's achieved, he scored like 0s and 2s. And by the end of it, he was scoring 10 out of 10 in all of them, because he had that goal that he wanted to achieve. And it was really helpful for like tailoring what we were doing and giving him that drive to kind of persevere with it.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful to hear. And I guess maybe that's a really good note to finish on, that sense that as parents, what we're hearing that Ethan, you managed with your family is to communicate about what helped and what didn't, and get your family on board to help support you with the things that you needed. And we know that when we've got adolescents, that it's really important to come alongside, be a coach, and not try and just direct and manage, because that doesn't work in making change. So it's about working together and communicating well. And it sounds like having good goals to work towards that are identified by a young person is really key, and also motivating, bringing around change as well. Okay, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us for the podcast today. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Hope. And we hope that's been helpful for you listeners to have a few more top tips to try and think about how to support your young person.